The course that you will undertake is the course, but your mentality is what's going to dictate which of those is your reality.
Off Gassing, a Scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. While on sabbatical from work, Stephen Aynsley went backpacking through Australia, and this is where he became introduced to the sport of scuba diving. After a few years, he would find himself working full-time in the industry. As he progressed through the sport, he would find himself in many locations throughout the world, gaining experience. In this episode, I chat with Stephen about his path through the industry, creating and mentoring instructors, travel experiences, a quick conversation about Colorado, and much more. Please enjoy. Stephen, how are you doing it's this afternoon for you, correct?
It's this morning. It's 9:05 a.m.
Okay, sorry. I sometimes slightly get my time zones messed up, but you're in Denver. How long have you been in Denver?
So I've been in Denver on and off for a couple of years now. My new wife, my current wife, she's working at a dive center here in Denver. So from my work, I commute back and forward.
Oh, okay. So I definitely did know that there was some diving in Colorado. So I used to live in Colorado years and years ago. I lived in the Breckenridge area.
I've been to Breckenridge.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely love it. I'm not going to lie, I don't miss the cold weather that much.
That's what I have outside right now. It's absolutely freezing today. Yeah, freezing. I do an ice trip every February, and this is good acclimatization training for that ice trip. So,
yeah. Okay.
I try to take the positive out of the very cold weather we've got here.
Well, I definitely look forward to hearing more about the ice trip. But my first question I wanted to ask you is, tell me how and why you got into scuba diving. Tell me about that first breath, that first experience. What led you to that moment? Was it love at first breath, or was it, I absolutely hate this, I'm never doing this again? It's always different, so I'm always curious to hear how it is for everybody.
That's a funny question, actually. This is like a role reversal because I'm a course director. And the very first thing we do in IDC is this introduction section where we answer certain questions. And this is like a role reversal on that, where now I'm the one having to do that. So my introduction into scuba is probably not as romantic as most people. I had a previous life, like most career instructors, a previous job. And in that job, I took a sabbatical from work and I used that time to backpack Australia with my brother. Part of that trip was my brother wanted to get certified on the Great Barrier Reef. My brother was, interested in marine life for all his life, and that was something he wanted to do. So our certification open water was in Cairns, Australia, so that we could dive the Great Barrier Reef. It's funny because leading up to that trip, like 1 or 2 days before, I actually wasn't that bothered about it. And I said to him, you just go. You just go. It's fine. I'll find something to do. And he was actually going to cancel the course because I wasn't going to do it with him. And I ended up actually only doing it so that my brother didn't miss out on something that I knew he wanted to do. So it doesn't sound that romantic of an introduction, but once you actually get in there and you're on the Great Barrier Reef, it kind of blows your mind a bit. That was 2003. So it was 20 years ago. I'm sure it was still under stress and pressure at the time, the Barrier Reef, but not to the extent which it has been documented, in recent years. So maybe I seen the Barrier Reef when it was in a more flourishing time. So it was amazing. That was 2003. After that, I was just a sport diver for a few years, just when you're on holidays, because I went back to work on holidays doing 1 or 2 dives here or there. But then I guess I had a bit of a trauma in life, just fell out of love with the job I was doing, like bad personal relationship. And I felt the need to escape the UK. I'm British. I'm from England originally, from Newcastle, England. So I just emailed a dive center in New Zealand saying, "Have you got anything I could do for 6 months?" And the guy replied. So within a week, I had booked a flight to New Zealand, got a visa, and I was on my way to New Zealand doing a dive master internship. That ended, and they offered me the chance to stay on and do an instructor internship. So I was working in the dive shop for a small salary and getting trained at the same time. So I ended up doing my IDC there as well because my boss was a course director, although at the time that meant nothing to me. He was a course director, and just the textbook example of what a mentor should be. I love the guy, absolutely amazing guy called Dave Drain at Dive Wellington. So I did my IDC there and worked for a few months as an instructor there until my visa expired. And then done the dive instructor thing, taking jobs, gaining experience, bouncing around, worked in many places. So first job was in Ireland, the Republic of Ireland. I got a summer job there and then moved to the Cook Islands in the Pacific. So the island was Aitutaki. And then long-term jobs after that, Barbados, Egypt, the Cayman Islands, and I've been in Utila for the last 8 years. I became a course director 8 years ago, and that's what I've predominantly been doing for the last 8 years is I teach IDCs and tech instructors. There are three of us now, three course directors. So we kind of alternate it, like bounce around. So that's what I do on Utila. So IDCs and tech, multiple countries, but I try to look for longer term positions, especially now I'm a bit older, that I don't want a 3-4 month contract somewhere. I like the longevity. So that's what I've been doing lately. Me and my wife, she's just left, but we actually have new jobs back in the Cayman Islands starting in May. And that's a long-term position. She's an instructor as well, an MSDT with Paddy.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, again, a long-term position.
Yeah. So my question there is, how easy was it for you to find the jobs? Was it just a matter of like going onto the I'm assuming Paddy website and applying, or how were you searching for these positions?
It's a bit of what you said. My first job initially, the one in Ireland, I found that on the Paddy job board. This was to give a perspective on years. I'd done my IDC in early 2007. So what's that, like 17 years ago? So I've been doing this for 17 years. So I got my job off the Paddy website. The job I got in the Cook Islands was actually because I'd done my IDC in New Zealand. The other people that were on my IDC were actually from all other Pacific Islands. So the one guy from the Cook Islands was on my IDC, and I kept in touch with him, and he offered me a job.
Oh,
so I
okay.
got that job because the guy owned the dive center. The job in Barbados I got because of a job advert on the Paddy site. The Cayman Islands was somebody I worked with, recommended go there. And after becoming a course director, I had a contact in Utila. So the guy I work with now, his name is Nick DeRuta. He's quite big on social media and YouTube with Dive Saga. He's my colleague. I staffed one of his IDCs as a staff instructor, and we just kept in touch because we got along really well. Same values, same moral principles. And he just offered right out the gate an opportunity to go and work there with him. So it's a lot of connections. That the dive industry covers the world, but the community is so tight. You always know somebody who knows somebody. So a lot of it is actually came down to connections that I've had within the industry just from knowing people and being in the industry has opened opportunities there.
Awesome, awesome. So when you were traveling to some of these new places, what were like how were you feeling just like, okay, I'm gonna pick up and go to this place that I've never been before and just sign up for a job? Must be kind of a scary, thing to do at times. I mean, it's obviously exciting, but like there has to be a little bit of nerves going into it.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the older I get, the more that comes into play. In my younger days, so I was in my late 20s when I started this. It's my birthday tomorrow, and
Oh,
I'm in my mid 40s now. Just to put that in perspective as well.
happy birthday.
I knew, yeah. When I was younger, it's that you're full of, I guess, that youth energy. That yeah, let's go there, and it didn't really bother me too much. Whereas now it's much more of a calculated decision. Like I sit down and I think, okay, and because of the internet, you can research places a lot more now than I think I could have back then. So I can get a better idea of what I might be letting myself in for. So yeah, that more research the older I get, more of a calculated choice. Whereas before it was just like, oh, I've never been there. Let's try there. Let's try there. I've had some disasters as well, like when I was, again, 10, 15 years ago, like summer contracts just to fill time in. And some of those were disasters. But at the time, it's like, yeah, whatever. It's experience, which it is, but it's not the kind of thing that I'm looking for now. It's more that I need to be more sure now about what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. So I became a PADI instructor in 2020, dive master
Mhm.
in 2019, PADI instructor in 2020. So I kind of know the roadmap to become to go on to becoming a course director. But tell me a little bit about that pathway from making it to instructor to eventually course director, because you have to be a staff instructor first before a course director, correct?
Right. Yeah, it's funny actually because we've had experience where we are, we do IDC every month, where I am currently in Utila. And because of that and the frequency of it, I've actually been responsible for three, I could argue four people, although I wasn't involved with one of them as much, who've gone on, who I've trained IDC, and they are now course directors themselves. So that sort of mentorship has been there as well, where I've helped them to some extent through that process. So yeah, after you're an instructor, so you take your instructor course. The next step is the MSDT. This is the PADI system, of course, is the Master Scuba Diver Trainer, where you have specialties under your belt. You must be an MSDT before you can do staff instructor training. The staff instructor training is where you learn how to audit IDCs, how to evaluate instructor candidates. You may remember, that your course director, scoring you, with slates and in the classroom, giving you scores, but giving you feedback is that's the true art of it, is the feedback you give to somebody. That, to me, I think the score is irrelevant. I treat the score as largely irrelevant. It's the feedback and the critique that you receive and how you manage that. To me, that's the true art of training professionals. So that's kind of what you've learned in staff instructor training. There is then between staff instructor and course director, there is another rating of master instructor. It's kind of like a bridge between the two. But you have to be at those levels for 2 years, staff instructor level for 2 years before you can then apply to be a course director. Because you have to gain experience in auditing, so that by the time you take your course director training, you kind of already know it. You're just refining the art of it, with the staff at PADI. It's an amazing experience. I done mine, like I say, 8.5 years ago, and it's an incredible experience. You don't when you go there, you're already capable. You're there because you're capable of being a course director. I don't want to say it's almost like you're just going through the process, but you're going there to make connections, to meet people, and everybody is good when you're there. So that the higher up you go in anything, the smaller the skill set, the skill differential becomes. You're all really good at that level. So it's a great networking opportunity, but also it does make you, it does up your game that 1%, which makes you elite. So it's an incredible experience. Yeah, I can't fault the course. It's expensive. It's a big investment. Time and finances, it's a really big investment, because you've actually got to get to the stage where you're accepted, and that costs money in itself, which people often don't factor in. But yeah, it was an incredible experience. My colleague Nick has a book out called Career in Scuba, and I wrote a passage in there. It's again just your journey, your advice to people, and in that I credit my upbringing in the dive industry and say that alongside being certified as a dive master, like the CD training is amazing, and it was probably the best professional day of my life, but on par with dive master certification. So the CD seems obvious. Well, of course, you've reached the pinnacle, as it were, but I put it on par with dive master certification. That was probably equally the proudest moment of my dive career. IDC is not even in that conversation for me. IDC was sort of like it was a natural progression from my DM course because my DM was well trained. My DM course was very good. So it was just, okay, next, which is not the same for everybody. So that dive master certification was definitely on par with course director.
Awesome. Awesome. So let me ask you this. So when did you start moving into the technical side of diving? Was that kind of early on, or was that kind of as you're going through training and then it just seemed like another natural progression? And then my follow-up question is, because Patty just revamped their whole technical side of it. So
Yeah.
if you want to tell me a little bit more about that, I would love to know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I was actually a little bit involved in that.
Cool.
I mean, I know those guys. The Paddy course, the new tech course, is something I've had for just over a year now. Anyway, I've been one of the advisors to that, so I do know a bit about it. To go back to how I got into tech was, I don't want to call it selfish reasons, but it was when I was basically a brand new course director. I was going through tech at that time, because when I was being accepted as a course director, I kind of felt like there's nothing left for me. Everything I have, I give away. Everything I have, I can teach. So there's nothing that's just mine. So tech became that thing. I thought, no, I really want to take this on. So to get like full tech certified, Trimix certified, I thought something for me. That didn't last long. As soon as I started doing it, I started really doing it. Again, we're a full tech center. Like I'd done most of this in my early days back on Utila. And because I had colleagues to dive with, I started doing it a lot. And the instructor inside of me, the mentor, the coach, the teacher, however you want to refer to it, I thought, I want to teach this. It's so good. Like the different elements of it, the skill set, yes, but the discipline, the knowledge, how fascinating it is, with the way you're putting the properties of physics. You can actually see them in play on a tech dive way more than you could recreationally. They just became fascinating to me. So I thought, I need to be able to teach this. So I got my instructor certifications and then my instructor trainer certifications, because I just thought, this is what I want to be teaching. So I've done that for basically equally as long as I've been a course director. Yeah, I really, really enjoy that. I would argue I probably enjoy tech diving and teaching tech more than I do IDC. But at the end of an IDC, when your graduates, when they are certified instructors, there's no better feeling than that. So I can never separate them and say one is definitely better than the other. But just overall involvement in teaching in tech, I prefer. but that reward and that feeling you get when your candidates succeed at the end of an IDC is unmatched. Is unmatched for me. So yeah, the new Paddy Tech course, absolutely great revision. I think I also hold TDI certifications, so I have TDI tech certifications. Before anyone comments on you, it's sometimes a bit controversial. How is a Paddy course director have other agency credentials? You're allowed them when Paddy don't offer a certain thing. You can have other agency credentials that do cover that. So that's why I have TDI credentials. It's to cover things that aren't offered or aren't offered currently with Paddy. Just so you don't get any hate comments about, you've got a rogue on your channel. So I think maybe historically people haven't looked at Paddy's tech programs as being that of substance. They would probably prefer things like TDI. I think TDI are probably the go-to in the tech field. SSI have technical programs as well. But I can say from being intimately involved and within it, that Paddy's tech program it stands up with everything else that's out there. And I guess it's advice to anyone who's looking to do tech. Like, the agency really becomes irrelevant. It's the instructor who's training you who matters. Ultimately, all of these agencies, basically, you will learn the same skills, the same theory. It doesn't matter what name is on that card. It's the instructor who's teaching you this. That's who you should be seeking out, not the agency. And I think Paddy's sometimes gets a bit lost in that because of a reputation, but the program is solid. The materials were very dated, hence the revision that's been going on for a couple of years. They needed it. The instructors, I guess we had to do a bit more work to kind of overcome the shortcomings of the materials. But the new version, it's actually phenomenal. The levels, so the Tech 40, 45, 50, they all have their own independent e-learning now. Before it was textbook and print offs, but now it has e-learning. We have to do it ourselves as part of, upgrading to be able to teach the new program. So I've done all of the e-learning, and it stands up with anything. The e-learning is actually really, really good. Probably Paddy's best e-learning product are these tech programs now. My wife, I done her Tech 40 a couple of years ago, and she's going to come to Utila in a couple of months, and I'm going to finish the training. So I've assigned her the codes for that, for the new tech program. So I'm going to go through it again with her. But the substance is amazing. Yeah, it's very, very good. It's a welcome revision, and it's very good.
Cool. And there was actually just a write-up, I believe, in In-Depth magazine about the new tech revision. I think the main editor, I can't remember who he interviewed, but by the end of the article, he definitely seemed really impressed with the whole new revision. And it's something that I definitely have to... a long time ago, I got someone kind of hand me down the textbooks, the Tech 45, I think, through Tech 60s. I'd have to look. It's been a while since I looked at it. And that was actually the first kind of tech stuff that I read way before I got into tech, because I'm relatively new into the technical world, maybe like the last year. So no, I definitely will have to familiarize myself with the new material and just kind of read through it, just because, for me, at the end of the day, like, any learning is good learning. So just to be able to read and go through all the materials is always a welcoming thing to do. So this is something that course directors were doing before the materials got released. Is that what you were saying? So you've been involved for like a year or two before it actually got released?
I guess not course directors, just, I guess, tech instructors who are, I don't want to say prominent, that sounds a bit... there are people who know far more than me, I'm sure of it. I just mean like very active people whose opinions are, they're respected with the people at PADI. I know Michael Richardson, who is the guy in charge of the PADI Tech programs. Like I know him. I get along with him really well. I've spoke to him in depth for many years, and I guess it's just a respected opinion from people like myself and others who were probably more involved on it. But yeah, I was given the materials to kind of look through and give my opinions on. So I guess just like a test panel of people who were testing this for about a year or maybe a year and a half prior to its release at DEMA just last year.
Was there a lot of revisions by the people trying it out, or was it pretty good right out of the gate?
I think it was pretty good right out. Because if you think about it, ultimately, it's the skills don't really change. You're still learning the same skills. That diving physics isn't changing, to that degree, within that level of training. So it's not really that the substance needs to change. Like if you read your old textbooks or you read the old PADI Tech Deep book, it's still the same information. It's still credible. I guess it's just the way it's now presented so that the student will maybe learn it differently from doing e-learning as opposed to reading textbooks. I guess it's just, evolving with the times and how people learn is people are migrating more away from, textbook-based learning to, digital platforms. So to a large extent, it seems that like the theoretical knowledge is more just being taken out of a textbook and put into an e-learning program. And when you go through it, the sections, there are, of course, a lot of them. You don't need to try and make it sound attainable for everybody. This is tech diving. There is a lot of stuff to know, and it can be, have very serious implications. So there is no shortcuts to it. So the e-learning, it puts things in sections and like paragraphs. So it's not like you got to read a full chapter of a book. You're just doing a section of e-learning, but there are many sections to it. So I guess it just breaks down the information into smaller sections. So maybe it doesn't overwhelm somebody who's trying to go through it.
Okay.
But it's the same substance. It's just presented differently, like with just a facelift as well, and a modern vibe to it.
I'm curious because like I was saying earlier, I've lived in Colorado, never been diving in Colorado. When you're over there, I'm assuming just it being Denver, you're getting into some high altitude diving. I'm assuming it's cold water too. But tell me a little bit about the diving in Colorado.
I could probably only tell you a little bit about the diving in Colorado. I don't do much of it for some of the reasons you just said. But yeah, I mean, this is the Mile High City, so yes, it's altitude diving. So where we do the diving here is that the reservoirs, which they're all closed this time of year. Something I learned was most reservoirs around here, they're privately owned. So the owners just close them down from, late October to springtime, maybe for liability reasons. I don't know. So actually, most people in Denver, you have to travel far. Like people who are doing courses now, they don't do their checkout dives in Denver. My wife's place, they go to Homestead Crater, which is in Utah. It's a volcanic crater, and it's like 92 degrees year round.
Oh, wow.
So they have to go there for their training. Also, Christmas Day, so just a couple of weeks ago, we actually went to the Blue Hole in New Mexico, which is about 6-hour drive south. We were diving the Blue Hole on Christmas Day. That's another place, like that's how far you have to go, like 8 hours to Utah or 6 hours to New Mexico to find an open water training site at this time of year in this area. But the reservoirs that we were diving, yeah, cold, very low visibility, like the typical scenario where you can't see your hand in front of your face. And yes, it's altitude, so you have to put in to play your altitude, parameters. If you don't have altitude capable computers, then you've got to pre-plan that, ascent rates, theoretical depths. So that all happens here. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I do. I would love, and obviously, you don't have to answer this now, but I'll reach back out because I'm super curious. Because so when I lived in Colorado, I lived in Park County. So I moved to I lived in Vail, I lived in Breckenridge, but the last place I lived was in Park County. I lived in a town called Alma, which for all you listeners out there, it's the highest incorporated town in North America. Leadville is the highest incorporated city. Alma is the highest
Yeah.
incorporated town. And
Right.
so there's a town right outside of Alma, or I'm sorry, there's a town right outside of Fairplay, which if people knows South Park, which show's created, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah.
But so I think it's like it's on 285 outside of Fairplay, a town called Jefferson. And so I lived in that town for a little bit, and there's a lake called Jefferson Lake, just way up in the mountains. Like, yeah, I mean, I can't even remember exactly how to get to. Like, you had to hike to it. And I remember when I became a diver, I was like, man, I really, really want to go dive at that lake sometime. So I would love to know if it's even possible. If you could find that out for me, email me. I'll email you in like a month and ask you
Yeah.
like, hey, did you ever find out anything about Jefferson Lake? Because I just remember going there and the water being like extremely clear because it's like I don't, obviously not a glacier lake, but it's a high altitude. I mean, picturesque, like the mountains coming down to the lake, the snow's melting. So,
Mhm.
but either way, I'm getting off topic. Um,
No, I'd like to find that out because it's the kind of thing I've wanted to do more of during my time here. Is like I just want to go out and do these random places just for fun and adventure. But we went to Leadville a few months ago, and my wife was saying, "Oh, because it's the highest city in the US and all," and she's big into hiking. And we went round a few of the lakes that are in that area, and just like you said, people do actually dive in them, but you can only go so far, and then I guess you've got to be, like shipping your stuff, maybe a couple of runs back and forward with your gear just to get them close enough to the water. But yeah, some of these lakes are like huge altitudes, but just for I guess, the experience of having done it. But people do it. So I would hazard a guess and say that, yes, people can do that lake. Although I
yeah,
don't know that specific one, there's a good chance people do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, because Jefferson is such a small town. I mean, we used to joke around about Alma and say if you blink, then you drive through the whole town. Like that's how
Right.
fast,
Yeah.
it's how small of a town it is. And Jefferson's even just it's just super tiny. But yeah, I haven't been. Last time I was back in Colorado, I've been living in Texas for a while, and we had a group of friends, and I showed up in Denver, and I remember the day that I got to Denver. I'm in my Chuck Taylors. Just I haven't been in cold weather in a long time, and I think they got just a bunch of snow. It was like 8 degrees, and I'm just like, I cannot do this anymore. This is just too cold. But all right, so it's a whole nother. That's why I'm really even the Texas cold was getting a bit much for me, and that's why I'm happy to live in Malaysia because
Yeah.
it doesn't get cold over here. So,
Yeah.
but speaking of cold, so you did a lot of diving in New Zealand, correct? It's pretty cold over there, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Even in the summer, it's cold. So the summer, you're looking 7 mil wetsuits, hoods, gloves, and that's at the peak of summer. Dry suits are absolutely acceptable. It is cold water. I guess New Zealand. It's funny because I think, did you have a few weeks ago Simon Mitchell?
He was a couple months back, but yeah, yes. And then I feel like I just talked to I've actually in the last month I've talked to a few different people from Australia, but I did have Simon Mitchell on. uh, I can't remember exactly when, but yes, I did speak to him.
I remember listening to the Simon Mitchell podcast that you done. I love the guy. He's amazing. Um, Actually, a lot of the way I teach certain parts of the tech course, it's down to him. It's down to listening to his talks. He just has a way of being so highly educated, but making a lot of his points understandable to a layman like myself. I think the guy's incredible. I can listen to him talk all the time. So I love your episode when you had him. Reason bringing it up is you asked about the temperature being cold in New Zealand. I think he even says it in your podcast. It's such a diverse range in New Zealand. I was in Wellington, which is south of the North Island. It's cold. It's cold water year round, freezing cold in winter, and gets colder when you go to the south. But you go up north, Auckland and past Auckland, it's actually, the water, it's very different up there, around the Poor Knights Islands, which I think he even mentions in that podcast, where it's much warmer water, clear. So they've got quite a range from glacial in the south, because there's nothing below New Zealand other than Antarctica, and the far north, it's actually don't want to say tropical. I'm not sure, but it's very, very different. But yeah, I was cold. I was in the cold. I'm a glutton for punishment. Yeah.
So, out of most of the areas that you've traveled to and been diving, what would you say is in the top? I'm assuming. I would. For me, it would be warm weather. But what are some just highlight destinations for you?
So I've spent some time in Egypt. Egypt was really, really good. I guess I think I mentioned before about Australia, how I think I dived it at a time before all these problems, started happening with regards to, coral dying in more recent years. When I worked in New Zealand, a woman that I worked with, she had worked in the Red Sea. And at that time, she said, "Oh, it's nothing like it was 20 years ago." And this was back in 2007. I didn't go there until a few years after, and I thought it was phenomenal. So I guess it's the perspective on it. Like, to me, it was phenomenal. It was a bit chilled, the water. It's not cold water. It's not warm water. It's like 3 and 5 mils is what you'll be wearing, and it's the land temperature is boiling hot, but the water is actually cool, and you get a good mix of reef and big life. So because of that, I think it's quite dramatic. They've got the big wreck there, the thistle gorm. So Egypt is definitely one of those places that I would say. Consistency, the Cayman Islands. I lived on Grand Cayman for 4.5 years. I lived on Grand Cayman, and just its consistency, it's just incredible. Like you dive in over 300 days of sunshine a year. It's very often calm and clear. You do get some bigger stuff there, some bigger sharks depending on where you want to go, but its consistency is incredible. So I would say Cayman Islands is almost like guaranteed, 7, 8 out of 10 dive.
Oh, okay.
But Egypt, and there were times where I just had my mind blown in Egypt. Yeah.
Awesome. And yeah, Egypt is, I have so many bucket list destinations, but Egypt is definitely one of those places. And even though I'm not a big fan of the cold, I still have some cold water destinations as well. I'd love to get to the Pacific Northwest is a bucket list destination. But so you're heading back to Cayman. Is that anything you can talk about, or?
Yeah, it's not a secret. So in May, we moved to Cayman Brac. So it's one of the smaller islands, but I guess largely because my wife worked for them previously before I knew her. So she worked there 6, 7 years ago, and they really want her back. I guess they're changing their structure there and looking more for established couples. Is the kind of the what they said to us, and we're aware of who I am. So yeah, we're very happy to offer us positions there. So yeah, we'll be going back there in May. So it Caymans, I've been to this place as well myself,
Oh,
like
okay.
as a tourist. So like I know the company. I not overly familiar with the island, but I spent a week there 8 years ago. But it's the Cayman Islands, and I've spent a lot of time there. So yeah, they maybe want to get a tech program off the ground. Hence, interest in me. They have rebreathers there, which are being that they're not being used. So I guess when you invest that much money in a couple of rebreathers and there's nobody to ever use them, that you kind of want to get that program running, maybe. So there's opportunity there to start maybe getting some more tech diving done out there because it's Cayman and those walls. That another reason why I said the Cayman Islands for consistency. Those walls are sheer and they go 10. I think one of the walls is 26,000 feet. It's the
Oh,
Cayman
wow.
Trench, I guess, one of the deepest spots on the planet, I believe. So really dramatic walls to dive there. So it'll be good to try and instill some tech programs there.
Yeah, yeah. So I another place that I told myself I was going to go when I was living in Texas. I have not made it down there, but tell me about Utila. What's the diving like there? What's the scene? I mean, you've been there for quite a while, so what's going on down there?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a really small island. It it's well known for two things: diving and partying. Like it's why people go. It's an extremely transient community because you get a lot of people, traveling through South America, Latin America. So maybe coming from the US and, traveling down through, Belize, Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua. They kind of make their way down. So it's very popular on the Travelers Trail. And Utila is a really famous spot. What I would say about Utila is for diving is it's a diving hotbed and more so, I would say, for training. People go to Utila to train at whatever level, anything from entry level diving to all the way through to high level instructor and in our case technical diving. So there is everything, and it's really high level. Like you wouldn't expect it. I guess people would have a perception of an island off of Honduras. It's like yeah, but it's high level training that gets done there. So I work for the College of Diving, and it's commitment to training there. Everybody is a high level instructor who we really instill in them quality, 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 because that's what keeps people coming back, and it keeps the name known. The diving it's pretty good. It's quite versatile at the south side, mini walls, so it's brilliant. It's almost like if you were going to make an island for training, you would make Utila because of the depths of the top of the reef, the bottom of the mini wall. It's just perfect for all levels of training. And on the north side, you've got massive drop off walls. So we do our tech dives out there, our deep trimix dives. There's a second drop off. I'm sure there's probably a third and fourth drop off. You know, so it's just tailor made for training. The neighbouring island is Roatan, which is pretty well known as well. I would argue Rotan's diving is better. There's more abundance of coral. The sites are more vast. There's more marine life, I would say. So if you're just going to fun dive, I would, my opinion is that Roatan's probably nicer. But if you're going for training, you go to Utila.
Okay.
It's what it's known for. But it's still nice diving. It's your typical Caribbean diving.
Awesome, man. So is it bittersweet to leave? Are you happy? Are you sad? Kind of ready for the next thing?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. Like there's good people there. The people I work with are good people, and they've helped me advance as well. That being around people like you helps bring you up. I can't be more grateful for having spent that much time there. It won't be the end, although I'll be leaving, I guess, in the full time capacity. The plan is to still periodically go back and do some relief work for things like IDC, because I don't know how much of that I'll get in Cayman. I mean, that's yet to be known as to what extent I'll be able to do that. But I do have the opportunity to be going back. It's pretty easy to get to from Cayman as well. So maybe once or twice a year I can just, still bounce back and, run periodic IDCs just to keep myself in that game and to relieve the staff who are there and working hard themselves.
And that's a year-round destination, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are moments where it'll have like, you could call it peak times, but it's year round. It's not really peaks and troughs. It's quite consistent. So yeah, and anytime.
Man, I really, really appreciate you coming on to the podcast. I just have one last question for you. As somebody that has conducted a lot of IDCs, what advice would you have for somebody about to go into the IDC and then after the IDC completing or going towards the IE? What are some key pieces of advice that you could give to those candidates?
I have this. I guess I have my own little buzz phrase that I use with my candidates, whether it's for tech or IDC, because I kind of align them the same mentally. And I always like my question to you, the student, the candidate, is in the case of IDC, I always ask, do you want to be an instructor or just call yourself one? So I use that as my phrase. Like I'll do it insert level here. So do you want to be a tech diver or just call yourself one? Because they are two very different things. The course that you will undertake is the course, but your mentality is what's going to dictate which of those is your reality. Because if you actually want to be one, then you'll put the work in. At this level, it's not a free ticket. It's not just a ride that you go on and you get certified at the end, contrary to belief. Put the work in. So it's firstly your mentality. So it's take it seriously, because this will be what you want it to be. I hate it when people call us dive bums. Like I'm not a bum. I'm a highly trained instructor who has pretty in-depth knowledge of properties of physics, decompression theory in the case of tech diving, the properties of the environment, physiological concerns, like we understand this on a pretty good level. That's not what a bum is. So it will be what you want it to be. If you go into it wanting to be a beach bum, then that's what you'll be. But if you go into it wanting to be a high level career instructor, that's what you'll be. So it's about what you want first out of this, because that's what's going to drive the reality. So I treat everyone as if you want this, like you want to be an instructor. Therefore, you'll put the work in. My advice is, after you decide that, is then seek out the trainer who aligns with you, because there's no good if you have the bum mentality coming to me, for example, is we probably won't get along because I'm going to be demanding from you things that you don't care about, or you're not willing to put that much work in, so then your learning is going to be hampered by having somebody like me, for example. However, if you're here to take it seriously, then my job is to create excellence in you, and I'm confident I can do that. So if you're taking this seriously, I can make you excel, which means you'll have fun. So take it seriously, have the right mindset, and then that's what's going to drive your success. So it's actually pretty simple, really. Like have a good attitude and seek out the trainer who you feel aligns with you, and don't be scared to interview your trainer. Like if it's me, ask me questions, like make sure that I'm the right person for you. It's a big investment from the person. So make sure that you're doing your due diligence so that you get out of it what you want as well. Long-winded answer, but
No,
yeah.
dude, that's an amazing answer, and I absolutely love that, because I feel like you could even bring that all the way down to the open water diver. Like, do you just want to call yourself a diver? Or do you want to be a diver? And no, that's an amazing answer, man. No, I love it, dude. I love it. Well, Steven, man, I really, really appreciate you coming on here on the show today. It's been absolutely amazing to hear about your journey. I will reach out to you. Like I said, you got to let me know about Jefferson Lake. I hope that I can come visit you in Cayman at some point, just because Cayman Brac.
I get a lot of those requests, funnily enough.
No, I definitely will. Cause it's kind of sad to say this, that so I learned to dive into, I got a lot of my certifications in Texas, and I never really explored that area, the Caribbean, that much. I've been to Mexico a few times, but just there's a lot of good diving there that I neglected, and I definitely at some point in time need to make it back there. And I will definitely add you to the list of places that I need, people that I need to visit. So
absolutely, I'd be happy to have you. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, this has been absolutely wonderful, man. I really appreciate you coming on here. So thank you very much.
No problem. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Off Gassing, a Scuba podcast.